Sorry
Can
about
you
that.
tell us your thoughts on the UPA rejection, the professor's rejection of the contract?
I think whether any union approves or doesn't approve of a contract, it doesn't create any more money for the government. So that means something else has to be done. And now the university will face some difficult challenges ahead. They could move forward to implement their last best offer to the professors, and the professors would have the right to strike at that point if they don't want to go along with it. Or the university could make further cuts in classes or other programs. But we simply don't have the money that we had projected we were going to have for the next 2 years. So there are going to have to be adjustments made. From my perspective, this is the time for everybody to pull together, everybody give up a little something so that the state can get through this difficult time. And I would say that if you don't want to be a part of the solution of having a reduction to some amount, then propose what it is that you want to have. I'm sure from the university professor's point of view, they have a different approach, and they need to put that forward and try to convince the university to go along with them.
Governor, some of the folks at the rally yesterday at the UH were calling for a general excise tax increase, and UPA seemed to indicate that today, saying that they would lobby legislators to come up with revenue enhancers. I know you've been strong against tax increases before. Your position hasn't changed, I imagine.
No, I think raising the excise tax right now would inhibit our ability to recover from this weak economy. It would put more businesses out of business, which means we would then collect less taxes. And in fact, the legislature did raise taxes last session. They raised income taxes, they raised conveyance taxes on property, and they raised the hotel room tax. And all three of those increases has actually produced less revenue than we were collecting a year ago. And so raising taxes is not going to solve the problem. We have simply a shrinking economy. We have a smaller government that we need to move forward with, and everybody has to pitch in at this time.
What about UPA's contract is in effect, their old contract, so they can lollygag till next year if they want and wait, for times to get better. What are your concerns about that?
Well, there are two issues involved there. One, the university will have the right to implement their last best offer, and that will set up a situation where then they'll have to decide do they want to strike or do they want to accept that last best offer. And also, I would say with every month that passes, the problem grows and grows because no savings have been realized for that past month. So that's why we've been pushing to get these contracts resolved so we can start as a state to realize those savings moving forward. So without being able to close the deficit at the university is going to face some very difficult decisions.
And then contracts, HGEA, the mayors are saying they're not holding things up. Where are you exactly now? What do you say to their comment?
I don't know where the mayors are. I don't know where they are physically. They're traveling different parts of the world. But we need to get this resolved here at home. We need to do it as soon as possible. Next session, we're going to go in and recommend some changes in the state labor laws. Because of the situation, you can see with the mayors having one point of view and the state government having another point of view. And there's some logic to it because the mayor's situation is very different than the state's. They have only a one-year budget. We have a two-year budget. Their main source of revenue is property taxes, and they haven't felt the effect yet of the downturn. They're going to feel it hard next year, so they're focused on that. But our downturn has already occurred. We need to address our deficit right now. And with each month that goes by, each week, we get further and further in the hole. And there's going to be impact on the counties because the legislature is going to see the hotel room tax and other monies that have gone to the counties. They're going to see that as a way to close the state budget gap. So the mayors have an interest in getting this resolved as soon as possible. So hopefully, even though they're traveling in other parts of the world or the country, they're going to give this the proper attention.
How will you ask to change the law?
Well, I think a number of things have to happen. First of all, we don't like binding arbitration. We think that is a disincentive to settle these kinds of disagreements because it allows things to stretch on. It allows a neutral third party to make the decision for the people of Hawaii, even though they have no skin in the game. They'll fly back to California and they'll leave us with that decision. I think the decision should be made by people here at home who have a vested interest, and it should be negotiated. Once you have binding arbitration, there's less of an incentive to settle these contracts. So that would be one major change I'd like to see. And then I'd like to see a delinking between the county governments and the state government. Let the county negotiate on their own. When I was a mayor, we pushed for this. I was a mayor on Maui at that time, and Mayor Fossey was here, and Steve Yamashiro on the Big Island, Joanne Yukimura on Kauai. And all of us, we recognized that so long ago. We said our interests are different. Our unions we represent, that we work with, are different in some cases. And our budgeting, our revenue sources are different. So I think the counties need to negotiate with their employees that reflects their particular financial situation. The state has a different financial situation. So we need to be able to negotiate on our own.
Governor, getting back to UPA, the two major sticking points for professors that I talked to were the fact that they couldn't be guaranteed another additional pay cut in the second fiscal year, and that retrenchment wouldn't occur in the second fiscal year as well. Is there anything that can be done to massage those two issues?
Well, I don't know. That's up to the university, but these are the same issues that face all the employees. I wasn't able to promise HGEA that there wouldn't be any further layoffs. I won't be able to promise UPW that, because as the numbers continue to deteriorate, and by the way, today's numbers will come out for the first quarter through September 30th, and they will be down substantially. So as you know, the Council on Revenues had projected 1.5%. The first 2 months were down 5%. This is going to increase again. So we're chasing, we'll get that out later on this afternoon, but it's more than the 5% that the first 2 months reflected. So there can't be those kinds of promises because we're required to have a balanced budget. So if revenues drop, just as in a business or in your home, we simply have to cut our expenses. We have no choice.
Are you looking at, can you talk about the second round of layoffs then, now that you know more or less what HGEA is agreeing to in terms of furloughs?
I can't talk about it yet, but the fact that the UPW is dragging on like this is going to force our hand. We're going to have to make some movement soon on that second round of layoffs.
And has there been a rescheduling of the arbitration hearing for UPW?
They may have picked a date. I'm not sure. They were set to talk about it. I know they've chosen the neutral third-party arbitrator. But remember this about the UPW. Only one part of UPW has arbitration, and that's the prison guards and the guards at the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility, that unit. The big unit that affects the counties to a large degree and affects us as well is the blue-collar Unit 1 workers. So that would be people who collect the refuse, the sewer treatment plant workers, the parks caretakers, those kinds of employees, the custodians in all the state buildings. They're in Unit 1. They don't have binding arbitration. They have the right to strike. We have the right to implement our last best offer. But again, because the mayors will not join us in that last best offer, people are questioning our ability to even make an offer. They're saying until you have the mayors, you can't make that offer. So it really is forcing our hand to move toward that second round of layoffs because of our inability to get the UPW issue resolved.
And then with the teachers, what about reopening that contract? Some people are raising that possibility now with the public being so upset at the loss of classroom days. Is there any possibility you could do that?
Yes, I have anticipated that would be opened up during the legislative session. I think it should be a combination of things. If legislators want to identify additional revenue, for instance, a hurricane relief fund, and they want to pay down so many of those days, the teachers should also give up those instructional and those planning days. There should be a mix and match of those two things because we wouldn't have enough money to buy down all of those days. So I do think it's something that should be considered and looked at.
How upset are you by losing the teaching days?
Well, I think, again, if I was the one who got to decide which days, I think I would have looked first to those non-instructional days.
And Governor, the last 12 months have been politically tough for you. What do you think about this whole situation and how it's how you've been portrayed in the public, and how do you think it's affected your political clout in the state?
Well, you know, you would, if you were in my position, you would know how much support the public has given to me throughout this entire past year. In fact, I was just at the YMCA this morning, and I'm there 6 days a week, and people come up to me every day to tell me, hang in there, Governor, stick with it, you're doing the right thing, and I appreciate that very much. So I have felt a tremendous outpouring of support from all across the state. The politics of it, that goes on whether it's a tough year or a good year. I'm just sort of used to it. And in fact, there was a Democrat council member in the gym this morning who came up to me and said, hey, if I was picked on by all the Democrats the way you are, I'd be working out my stress too. And I said, well, this has been for 30 years. I mean, I get it. You know, you like everybody on your team, and when they're not, you know, you want to pick on them. But that's just been the way it's been. My obligation is to the taxpayers of the state to make certain that we're positioned not only now to meet our constitutional obligation, we're well positioned for the future. And that's why you see us continuing on with our energy independence initiative and our STEM initiative for science and technology in the schools. We're doing so many good, positive, exciting things. The focus has been on the things we're not able to do, and I think people should focus much more on what we are able to do. We'll get through this period, and Hawaii will emerge stronger than ever.
And then the last question, the 18 furlough days for HGEA and 24 the next year, I mean, this isn't what you wanted. How much more do you think you're going to need to have to scrape around to make up that money?
Well, there are hundreds of millions of dollars that still have to be covered, even after this settlement, and eventually we'll settle with UPW. So there are going to be a lot more things the government is going to have to do to live within its means, but it's really no different than what the business community has faced already for the past year and a half. I think putting off making these decisions earlier is just making it more difficult now, and that's why I hope we can get it wrapped up soon.
Are you disappointed with what you ended up with from HGEA?
No, I think you have to put it into a historical perspective. No union in Hawaii history in public service has ever taken even a decrease of any amount. So the whole idea of it is something that people had a hard time coming to grips with. The legislature never came to grips with it. When I asked them for the authority early on to get these contracts resolved, they kept trying to just push more money there so everybody could stay equal without realizing that the revenues would continue to drop. So I think, again, considering the history of public employee unions in the state, I think we're doing okay. It's not something we want to do, it's just something we have to do.
And finally, Governor, some folks at the UH rally yesterday mentioned that this is a fabricated billion-dollar deficit, projected billion-dollar deficit, that it could be solved simply by delaying contributions to the EUTF and other things of that sort, just by delaying payments that the government is obligated to pay. What do you think about those claims?
Yeah, I think it's like a person who writes an overdraft on their checking account and says, no problem, just write a check. When you don't have money to cover the check that you wrote, people don't get paid. We can't just not pay the people who provide health insurance to our employees. It's not a solution, and I think they really need to be a part of the solution at this point.
Thank you, Governor.